Hey guys, Xander Holt here. And today we're going to talk about one of the biggest modern day alpha inhibitors that is killing your manhood, making it much more difficult for you to get rock hard stage 4 erections and maintain those erections, as well as lasting as long as you want, or just being an overall beast in the bedroom. Unfortunately, our modern world is full of these alpha inhibitors. And what I mean by an alpha inhibitor is anything that inhibits our manhood, decreases our testosterone level, decreases our dopamine levels, makes our blood flow much more difficult to get into the pelvic region, getting erections, making it much more difficult to get erections and maintain those erections, tanking our libido, anything that tanks our libido or gives us premature ejaculation or makes it difficult for us to express ourselves as a man, any of those things, those are alpha inhibitors. And unfortunately, we live in a world that is full of these things, way more than our fathers and grandfathers ever had to deal with. But we do have to deal with them. If you want to have an amazing sex life for your entire life, then you need to know what those inhibitors are and deal with them, or they will take you down. So one of the big ones we're going to talk about today is being sedentary. Primal man is anything but sedentary. Not that he doesn't rest. He rests. It's very important for your testosterone levels to rest. But through most of the day, walking, hunting, exploring, creating, interacting with tribe members in a collaborative fashion, being under the sun, contact with the earth, all of those things that we are so disconnected from today. We tend to be in front of our computer screens, and when we do interact with each other, a lot of time it's on the phone. It's not one-on-one. And most importantly is we tend to sit all day. That sitting is terrible for your erections. I've been a physical therapist for over 20 years, and I specialize in helping people with their sex lives. And from a physical therapy perspective, that has a lot to do with the pelvis and the hips. And we have what's called hip amnesia in our modern day society, where people just don't know how to use their hips right. So I have incorporated a lot of proprietary techniques into my Rock Hard for Life formula that really gets to the source of these hip and pelvic restrictions. You may find that you get good erections in some positions, but then you change position and you lose your erection, or it gets softer. Like you stand up, it starts to get softer. You lay on one side versus the other side, it starts to get softer. That has to do with muscular and fascial constrictions that are happening in those positions. And we go deep in the Rock Hard for Life formula and releasing all that stuff. So you have great erections in any position. But let's talk about today about the hip hinge. Well, sit to stands in particular, because sitting all day is killing your manhood. And I see it in a variety of ways. One of which is when those hips get really constricted, then guys, when they're having sex, they tend to get very stiff when they're having sex. It's like their thrusting is like the back and the hips and the pelvis are all kind of one unit, like a board almost, like a board that's kind of bending, versus bending at the hips and pelvis. That's the natural way to do it. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we sit too long and we plop when we sit. When we plop when we sit, we completely lose that hip hinge and we start developing hip amnesia. And then when we sit for long periods of time, we start to develop decreased blood flow to the pelvic region because of all this hip flexor tightness and fascial constrictions that happen. So, how do we overcome that? We're going to do what's called a power sit to stand. So, what you do for this is when you come up, you get your nose over your toes. Most people do this. But the trick is when you come down, you keep your nose over your toes. Don't let your knees go forward. Keep them as far back as you can. Don't use your arms if you can. Nose over toes and down. Simple, but now you're using your hips in both directions and not plopping in your chair. Do that every 15 minutes, at a minimum every 30 minutes. It will greatly improve the blood flow to your pelvis and help open up a lot of this fascial and muscular constriction. Like I said, we go into that way more depth in the Rock Hard for Life formula, but that will get you started because that's the source of a lot of the problem right there, that prolonged sitting and plopping in your chair. All right, that'll do it for today's video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to our free Facebook group, Rock Hard for Life, where we talk much more about primal sex, getting stage 4 rock hard erections, and lasting as long as you want. Until next time, go be a beast.